I want to start with fungus gnats. So this is something I've battled many times in the past, especially if you're growing organically. One of the key things to do is to keep the medium moist, have those microbes working to break down those amendments, make them available to the plant. However, fungus gnats thrive on that wet medium, right?
That's very true.
So they come through very, very often. Can you talk to us about fungus gnats? Maybe, what are fungus gnats, ways to battle them, et cetera, et cetera?
Sure, absolutely. And you've hit the nail on the head. That is the major problem, is that on the one hand, you need that moisture in your substrate, but at the same time, fungus gnats and other organisms love that situation. What's good for the plants is good for the pests, as it turns out. So I do tell people very often, not just for fungus gnats, but other sorts of pests, especially if you have a mulch, that sometimes the best thing you can do is actually kind of let things dry out at the top layer. And, it's sort of unfortunate. It does sort of, obviously will affect some level of microbial diversity and of course, your topsoil dynamics. But generally speaking, if you kind of have an overrun or overabundance of them, that's sometimes what you have to do, at least to get it a little bit under control. There are various products that you can use as well. And my favorite way to go about it, if you're a home grower, sometimes you can acquire things like nematodes. There are a few different ones you can apply. I find that they work really well in my personal experience, not only in home growing settings, but also commercially. There's a few species. Steinernema feltiae, or SF, is very commonly used. You could also use Steinernema caprocapsi, I believe it's how it's pronounced, which is like SC. But personally, I just like to use the SF nematodes or an application of Beauveria bassiana, which is an entomopathogenic fungus that's commercially available, but I think you can also acquire it in other cases for the home grower. And there are also botanical insecticides that you can use that are derived from plants, like azadirachtin from neem or pyrethrin from chrysanthemum plants, but you have to be a little bit careful with that. Generally speaking, especially in a home grow setting, you don't necessarily know, and it's been my experience that some plants will react totally fine if you apply at the label rate or half the label rate or whatever that is for you where you're growing. And sometimes plants are very susceptible or for whatever reason weak to it. So you have to be careful whenever you're using a new product like that. I always caution that people apply it sort of at a lower rate just to see.
I usually have the yellow sticky traps. I put them by the grow pot by soil level. Then I can see if they have the problem to begin with. Then from there, I'll do treatments. Now, I've done neem oil in the past, which you mentioned. Would like to know specifically what's your recommendation for how often to spray neem oil in regards to getting rid of fungus gnats?
Oh, I always say when it comes to application rates, that's super important. And this will be true for all the pests we talk about, to crop scout and to be very vigilant in looking at your plants, because sometimes you can apply something and in one context you can be one and done, very rarely, but it happens sometimes, or maybe two and done, and you can apply it like one day and then wait a day and take a look and then maybe apply it the next day or the day after that. But it's always going to be constantly looking at your status and your particular pressure. With fungus gnats too, you make a great point about having the sticky cards. It's also really useful to sometimes have them outside of your property so that you can see what you acquire outside and you can see what the pressure is in the ambient location. Sometimes you have something as simple as a leaky pipe or some other sort of thing that creates a water-dense zone of moisture surrounding your area. Maybe you live near a river or a stream potentially, and that could be a potential sort of haven for these fungus gnats and other pests, and so then they can ingress from that location. So if you're aware of your context outside as well as inside the cultivation space, then I think that's a very useful information and can help modulate how often you have to apply. And unfortunately, in some cases, people just get them like too often, and it's because of their locality rather than them doing anything specifically wrong.
Now, how about nematodes? Nematodes, you mentioned that was a way to combat them. I've never used them before. What is the typical application rate for them?
Again, it does really depend on your pressure. I would try to apply them when you have a heavy amount. It might not be worth the economically and also sort of the hassle, especially as a home grower, to apply them unless you're applying them perhaps regularly, or if the crop that you're growing is just sort of worth it for you potentially. There's a lot of factors to consider, but about a lot of times these nematodes come in quite large amounts. You might even purchase them in the millions and perhaps multiple millions of nematodes. It's important to apply them. Usually there will be some sort of instructions. You can always talk to the supplier to get better information about their specific product. But it's usually very important to apply them if you're watering them in with some sort of agitation. That's something that people often don't remember to do. And so what happens is that all the nematodes sort of stay at the bottom, and you're watering it in maybe through some sort of pump. And especially if you're using a nozzle that has grading, you will smash the nematodes, and they won't exist any longer if they go through some sort of mesh grading. So be sure those are the two perhaps biggest things that I see people make an error about when it comes to fungus gnat application, or rather nematode application for fungus gnats.
Yeah, so nematodes, you can buy them off of Amazon. I've heard mixed reviews off of them, like sometimes they show up dead or something like that. Do you have like a source that you can recommend for nematodes?
Absolutely. There are a lot of biocontrol companies that, and I always say this, so I'll keep it very brief. Essentially, there are primary producers and there are tertiary producers. And generally, you don't want to buy from tertiary producers because the product is usually not up to snuff for various reasons, either because they got the biocontrols and they've kind of kept them in this sort of, staging system where they're not really the freshest that they could be. So that can be a problem. Of course, you might get something secondhand if you go tertiary. But from primary producers, there are several. Coppered biological systems is a big one. Beneficial insectary is a big one. And if they don't have the nematodes themselves, for whatever reason, maybe supplies, they'll definitely know a source for you. And usually these places are very professional and are willing to sort of point you in the right direction.
Okay. And then one last thing, which we probably should have gone over in the beginning, is understanding the life cycle a little bit better. If you have a population of fungus gnats, you get your little sticky cards, maybe you're spraying neem, and all of a sudden they're gone. Well, they've laid eggs, in the medium, right? So like you could have a whole new population happen after a little while, right? So what is kind of the life cycle of a fungus gnat?
There are many kinds of fungus gnats. A lot of people interact with the dark-winged fungus gnats, which is the Burdesia genus. And you can tell them, they're very often confused for like aphids, especially like rice root aphids and things like this. So they're very thin-bodied. They like to walk, and they're very nimble when they walk across like a substrate, for example, like your soil. That's what the adults look like. They're kind of thin, tiny flies. Not very substantial. They don't approach anywhere near the size of like a housefly, for example. Again, they're very dainty. But the fungus gnat larvae themselves can be told from other sort of worm-like organisms because they have a white, cream-colored body. Sometimes you can see the gray intestinal tract, and they'll have a black capsule head, which is very important because other fly larvae may lack this entirely. So you can definitely tell them from other things. They're part of different groups. So like a white colored larva that can get about a few millimeters long, and oftentimes they can also produce sort of a mucus. So if you have a large population of them, or if you have a population, especially after you've dried, they can use that mucus and create kind of like a tunnel that can be shelter for them when it gets drier as well. So that's one reason why drying might not be enough, and you have to go in with some sort of a product. Additionally, you could use something like a bacillus product, but specifically something like Israelensis, Bacillus thuringiensis Israelensis, which I will be happy to talk about or spell for anyone who needs it. But that's the particular fly associated subtype for that species of bacteria.
This clip is brought to you by AC Infinity. Use discount code MrGrowIt15 to save on any of their products.